Hello, everybody, and today what we're going to be doing is tier listing every single faction from WWE and AEW. Now, there are a lot of factions that we are going to be going through here, and I would like to mention I accidentally entered the OC on here twice, so I'll go through them first and just get them out of the way. But we have a lot of tiers that we're going through here. I'm going to be putting all of them from WWE and AEW onto the same tier list, just so you can see where I think they stack up. Now, there is this little group here of factions from AEW. I just don't know well enough. I do watch a lot more WWE rather than AEW. Most of the AEW factions I will still be ranking, but these three right here, Shane Taylor Promotions, the Premier Athletes, and I genuinely forgot the name of this other one. I'm not going to be ranking. It's something like the Artillery or something like Infantry. I think it's the Infantry. And I just don't know enough about them to rank them accordingly. So we're just going to put them in the okay to good and just middle spot because I'm assuming at the very least they're okay. And I haven't seen any discourse about them on Twitter or anything. So I'm assuming they're fine enough. I'm not going to be ranking them. I'm just putting them there as I don't know. But the rest we will be going through here. We have something in the neighborhood of 15 to 20. We'll be going through them in basically just a random order of sorts. We have 6 tiers that we are going to be going through here. We have the Hall of Fame, great, good, okay, poor, and terrible. Now, they do have their own color orientations, but you will notice there will be a lot more in the middle than there will be at the top and bottom, but we will get started with the Elite. Now, the Elite, I do think, as a whole, if you look at their past history, they are a Hall of Fame group, and I do believe that's where they're going to go. Now, you can argue great because right now they're not doing so hot. Adam Page, he's great, but the Bucks, they haven't defended their tag titles in a long time. They've been champions for over 100 days with 0 title defenses, which is something that even Logan Paul didn't do when he was first became champion. But I do believe they are a Hall of Fame faction. I don't think, even if they do have current flaws, you can really discount their, past success for the many years they've been together with varying members coming in and out. And I do think that they are one of those top tier Hall of Fame people, AEW, WWE nonetheless. Then we move on to the Undisputed Kingdom. This faction has been, again, this is one of the ones that I don't know too much about, but I am in a rank because it's not like I know nothing. And from what I've seen, they haven't appeared on TV that much. Adam Cole's been injured. Not really believable, especially after that World's End turn. And for that sake, I'm just going to be putting them in okay for the moment. Again, I would like you to take my AEW picks with a grain of salt because, as I said, I don't watch too much of them. But I do think from what I have seen, if Adam Cole wasn't hurt and if they were being taken seriously as a legitimate threat in the company, I do think you could see them in that good to great. But right now, from what I've seen, I think okay is a good place for them. Then we move on to Top Flight, which is Dante Martin, Action Andretti, and the other one. I forgot his name. But it's the Flippy guys. And because they're the Flippy guys, I think they go in okay as well. They're not a faction that's like, winning everything. They're not, consistently in the tag title, TNT title contention, or anything like that. But, they're always putting on entertaining matches. I got to see Dante in action live a couple of weeks ago. And that was really fun. They had a great match. It was the 8-man tag team match with Mark Briscoe and Kyle O'Reilly. I don't remember who they were against. I think it was Undisputed Kingdom. And it was really fun. It was a very enjoyable match. And I think that they are a very top-tier group. I just don't think that they are, in that good, great, etc. category. And by the way, you can really interchange people in the okay and good tiers. You can say, oh, they had this really good match, so you can put them in good. Or, man, they haven't been doing too hot lately, so they can be okay. Really, people in those 2 tiers can flip back and forth interchangeably, depending on how they do week to week. Then we move on to WWE stuff with Damage Control. I do think they are actually a really good faction. I don't think their booking recently has been incredible, but I am going to be putting them in great as one of the best women's factions recently. Because while, yes, if they were a men's faction and they had the exact same booking as they do now, they might not be, great. They may be, good, okay. But I think we haven't seen a women's faction like this really, period, especially in WWE. Think about the women's factions right now. There's one I forgot to include even. It's the new trio of Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, and Sonya Deville. They're very new, so I would put them in okay. But it's really one of the few women's factions we've had, period, over the course of the past couple of months and years even. We've seen the Becky Lynch, Trish Stratus, Lita group. That was one. Just Damage Control. But anytime Damage Control are going up against somebody, it's either a tag team plus some random, or just a conglomeration of people. For example, Survivor Series last year when it was Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, Shotzi, somebody else I don't remember. But it was really just oh, cool, and really nothing else beyond that. It might have been just a 4-on-4. I might be wrong, but nonetheless, I do think for a women's faction, they definitely do belong in that great tier, and even as a whole, they would be at the very least in good. Then we move on to the House of Black. This is one of the AEW factions that I actually do know a decent amount. I'm going to be putting them in good. I think you can argue them down to okay, but I think their gimmick is really fun. Yes, they are kind of clowned on occasionally, but I do actually enjoy the kind of spookiness of them. I'm a big fan of Brody King. I think he's actually really, really good. Aleister Black, Malachi Black, is very talented. I don't think he gets to shine enough. He hasn't had a singles match in a hot minute from something I saw. And Julia Hart is, of course, very, very good. So I do think they belong in this good tier. You can argue them moving up or down one, but nonetheless, that's where they belong to me. But I'm also going to be moving the factions I don't know well enough to the bottom because it is getting way too distracting moving them in the middle and all. So just remember that represents somewhere in the blue or green area. Then we move on to that doubling of the OC. I do think right now the tag team half of them in Luke and Carl is pretty good. I think Michin's doing pretty well herself. They're mostly still down in NXT. I don't think they're good or anything. I would put them in okay for the moment. This is one of the few groups I'd stick in just okay. I do think they can have good highlights and good matches and good moments, but I don't think if someone said OC are main eventing this episode of Main Roster TV, there's not many people who can be like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. I think the OC, this is what I'm coming to see this show for. And that's what you can argue for things that are in the great and above category. Like, people go to AEW sometimes for the elite, or at least they did. And, maybe not exactly with Damage Control, but I have seen a lot of, young women who do really like Damage Control, and men as well. But I have seen people be like, oh, I'm so happy that we get to see Damage Control and the elite on these shows. And that's why they're going up there as not just my personal rankings, but how they have shown themselves to be for many other members of the wrestling community far and wide. Then we move on to the patriarchy. I do really enjoy the patriarchy. They are going in great for me. Christian Cage is hilarious as this character. I've really enjoyed it. Nick Wayne and Mother Wayne are also fun. And Killswitch is a very powerful brawler who is kind of the knot that knits everything together. Because Wayne and Mother and Christian, they're all great. But then if you add Luchasaurus / Killswitch in, it's incredible. And I do really enjoy this group. I think their jokes are really funny, especially Christian. And yes, they're supposed to be a serious group. We hate fathers and stuff. But they're just really funny to me. So that's why I'm going to be putting them up there. And again, it's one of those groups that you might see somebody like, man, I really want to go see Dynamite because Christian's on it. Christian, that guy from like the 90s and 2000s, he was in WWE for a while. And now he's got this group in AEW. It's another company. And it's called the Patriarchy. It's actually really cool. That's like someone who really wants to show their friend who doesn't know wrestling or hasn't seen it for a while this group. And that's something that I do think can feasibly happen in this world. Then we move on to the Legado del Fantasma. I'm going to be putting them in okay. I think that you can argue them being one below or above, but I think that what they've done, yes, they're not getting too big reactions, but I do think Angel is really good and really underrated. Humberto Carrillo is not that bad either, now just Berto, which is a stupid name. Electra Lopez is still pretty green, I will argue that. And Santos Escobar is not the most charismatic individual, I will say. However, I do think that they do have their highlights, especially in tag team matches. They are great. I do think they can be utilized more than they are right now, but nonetheless, it's a good enough faction to boot. And we move on to the... Wait, I gotta do the voice. The Learning Tree, which is obviously going in terrible. Chris Jericho and anything he is adjacent to is some of the worst stuff in modern wrestling that I can possibly think of. Like Chris Jericho, the joke that he is trying to peddle is, people hate me because I'm on TV so much. So guess what I'm going to do? Be on TV more. I'm sure that will completely change people's minds, right? Why are they booing? But like, why are you doing that? TV time Chris Jericho is stupid. The Learning Tree segments as a whole are stupid. I've never even seen a match that is the Learning Tree versus blank, because all I see of them are just talking segments, especially with Jericho, who is, I think, a champion still, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong on that. I can look that up. But like, what is the point of this? It bothers me that they are a faction, period. And I don't think that they are an interesting faction. I don't see anything. I'm like, wow, I really want to go see the Learning Tree. No one, until I just said it right now, no one on earth has ever said, I actually want to go see the Learning Tree. Like, no one on this planet wants to say that, because he's just not fun. And let's see, Chris Jericho has not had a match in 18 days as of when this is recorded. He is the current FTW champion. I was right. Like, come on now. Why is he on TV? Period. Anyways, we will move on to the Don Callis family. This is another one of those factions I don't know too much about. I have heard a lot of good things about them. I've also heard a lot of bad things about them. As such, I'm going to put them in the good tier because, there are a lot of great talents in there. Like Powerhouse Hobbs is great. Takeshita is also very good. And just because of that, I'm putting them in good. But again, take this one with a bit of a larger grain of salt. This is more like 5 grains of salt because, I'm not exactly the best when it comes to knowing these factions here. Then move on to the Dark Order. Wait a minute, I got to do their entrance. Join the Dark Order, and then their song. But I literally know nothing about the Dark Order. I know absolutely nothing. I don't know why I didn't put them in the factions I don't well enough section. The last time that I knew anything about the Dark Order is when I added Anna Jay's theme song to my list of liked songs. That's probably the last time I ever knew anything about the Dark Order as a faction, which is sad, but it's also true. So I just got to be honest about it. Now, I can't find the Dark Order on here anywhere, which is unfortunate. But I don't know when their last match was. Evil Uno, who is a big member of the group, had his last match 73 days ago. And the last time they were pinned in a tag team match was 438 days ago. They have not had a world or a title match in 324 days. Fun fact. By the way, I'm getting all these details from AEWresults.com. I just found it while I was doing some research for this video. It's actually really helpful and entertaining for when I'm trying to make these videos, so I know what I'm doing, what I'm adding in. It's very nice. I do recommend you check it out if you want to learn some more about AEW. I wish they had more stuff like this for WWE, but nonetheless, let's continue on with the list. Then we move on to this group. I don't remember their name. It's Kyle O'Reilly, Tomohiro Ishii, Mark Briscoe, and one of the other guys. I genuinely forgot his name. But I do think they are very funny. I am very entertained by this crew. They always have funny backstage promos, especially Mark and Kyle trying not to laugh. They have also great wrestling when they do eventually get in the ring. And because of that, I'm putting them good. They're very fun. They're enjoyable, this, that, and the other thing. And I do think that they are a good faction. Then move on to the somehow still existing BCC. And the reason I say this is because they haven't really had a tag match together. And Moxley's been gone. And Danielson doesn't wrestle that much anymore. Wheeler and Claudio, they're still doing their thing. But it feels like they don't really exist as a great, top tier faction anymore. I'm not saying that makes them, bad or terrible or anything, but I'm going to be putting them in good still, even though they don't really exist altogether anymore. Then we move on to the Final Testament. Now, Final Testament, I am going to be putting in poor. I think you can move them up to okay if you want, and I think that they have their moments, which is why they're not in terrible. They're really just not believable as a group. Akam and Razor, they're trying to push them as these big top tier guys, and they just lose tag matches all the time. Huh? That doesn't work. Imagine this. WWE is trying to build up a new talent. They're trying to make Braun Breaker feel like a huge guy. And they have him go for a mid-card title, and they're like, yeah, let's go get him. And then he loses the match. Huh? Oh. Yeah, that happened. Shoot, my comparison isn't very good now, is it? Nonetheless, this is not a very good group. I do not think that they are going to be anything spectacular. I do hope that they can be a good group. I am a fan of Karrion Kross, after all. But I don't think they're very good right now, and that's why they're in poor. Then we move on to the Bang Bang Gang. I love their theme song, and that's really all I know about them. So they're going in great. My opinion is over with. Then we move on to the new bloodline, the Temu bloodline, the whatever bloodline you want to call it, just not the OG one. I do think that they can go in the OK section. I don't think they are too believable as, with this dominant force, this dominant faction at all. And if you do remember, they are tag team champions. But at the same time, I don't really believe them. Roman beat 3 of them up all by himself, which is insane if you're trying to make them look good. But I get it. Roman is obviously way better than every single person in there combined, except maybe Jacob. And nonetheless, I do think they are a fine faction. Nothing too special, nothing too terrible. Then we move on to the very recently broken up Judgment Day. This faction was incredible in their time when they were together. They're going in the Hall of Fame for me. I do think that they are genuinely one of the best factions of all time if you look at their work together. And you can argue that they do still exist as a new version of themselves. And I think that you can keep that going as a storyline and build them to be an even bigger faction than they already are, even though they are still in that Hall of Fame group where they do belong. Rhea World Champion, Damian World Champion, Finn challenging for the world title a couple of times, and Dominic did technically do it once on a house show. And I do think, you add Carlito into the mix, that's funny. You add Liv into the mix now, you add, this, that, and the other thing, and it is a really good group that does deserve that Hall of Fame slot. Then we move on to the LW. Oh, I did that completely wrong. But nonetheless, the LWO, I think they go really right next to the Legado del Fantasma. Jeez, I can't speak. Whereas they are a very similar faction, just Latinos who don't like the other group of Latinos. Triple H is really good at booking Latinos, am I right? I want to like both groups here, but I do think that they have really good talent in them. They got Rey Mysterio in the LWO. They have Cruz del Toro and what's the other guy's name? Cruz del Toro, Joaquin Wilde, and I think that they are really good. But they don't get enough TV time. They don't feel like a viable faction anymore. I don't think that they can have that momentum if they're not getting those TV slots. Whereas I do believe that the talents in these groups is really good. They're just not utilized enough. Then the last group, the newest group I would say that is on here, American Made. This is Chad Gable and the Creed Bros. This is very new, so we can't really say too much about them, but they do look pretty good. I'm going to be putting them in okay again. They are very new. We don't want to know too much about them yet. But all in all, they are a good faction from what we've seen. Got 3 really good wrestlers in there against the Wyatt Six, who I also forgot to put in here. Goodness gracious. Speaking of, there is one more. We'll get to that in a second. But American Made, 3 really good wrestlers. At least 2 of them can cut a good promo in Julius and Chad. I don't know too much about Brutus. And I do think that they will be a dominant faction. But again, just started. Give them some time. Then the Wyatt Six, who are the legitimate last one. Howdy, Mask, right back here. I do believe that they're going to be going in the good status right now. They've been around for a while, just had their first match together, looked really good in that match. The segments have felt really, a little spooky, but they're still rooted in like normal stuff rather than all supernatural in the ways that The Fiend was. And all in all, they would be in the good tier, but I don't have a little picture for them, so just phantom impose them right there. So that's my tier list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Here's the whole thing, if I can center it on the screen. There we go. That's the best I can do. So do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments down below. Make sure you have a good day, good evening, good night, good morning, good dawn, good desk, good whatever. Make sure to watch any former or future episodes on this channel. And goodbye.